I was the one who found the first jar, so I guess that makes this my fault. My name is Dana Whitfield, and for the past 6 years I've run a podcast called Cold Acre out of my spare bedroom in Granite Falls, Washington. It's the kind of show that gets maybe 1,200 downloads an episode, mostly retirees and true crime obsessives who email me tips about cases that went cold before they were ever even called warm. I'd been a paralegal for a decade before that, and I'd watched enough Discovery Files to know that most solved cases are boring, and most unsolved cases are just sad, lonely, full of holes that never got filled because nobody cared enough to shine a light in them. The Whitcomb County area is a weird pocket of the Pacific Northwest. You've got the sprawl of Seattle creeping up from the south, but head 20 minutes east and you're in a state of evergreen darkness so thick it swallows the sun by 4 p.m. in December. Plenty of places to hide things. And that's exactly where people have been hiding them for a long time, it turns out. It just took me 11 years to notice. The jar was found by a mushroom forager named Ray Kinsella. No relation. He was very tired of hearing about that, near the base of a rotting cedar off the old Vosburg Trail. That's about 3 miles past the last farm on Silver Creek Road, a stretch of county land so unremarkable even the logging companies gave up on it. He'd posted a picture of it to a local foraging Facebook group, asking if anyone recognized the brand of pickling jar because the glass was old. Blue, the kind that glows like a gas flame. In the picture, sitting next to his basket of chanterelles, it looked like a prop from a movie set. Small, innocent. You couldn't see what was inside in the photo, not clearly. But I zoomed in anyway, and that's the thing about zooming in. You can never unzoom, not really. I've interviewed families of missing people. I've sat in living rooms that smelled like cigarette smoke and shame and grief so thick it was like breathing underwater. I know what it looks like when a photo of a person gets old, how the corners go soft and the faces blur into something almost generic. But the thing inside that jar wasn't a photo. It was a finger. One finger floating in something that looked like honey but was definitely not honey, because honey doesn't turn the color of engine oil when it sits in a basement for a decade. Ray didn't want to talk to me at first. He just wanted to know if it was worth anything, because he'd already thrown the jar away. Thrown it in the dumpster behind the Dollar General in town. I stood in his dirt driveway while he told me this, holding my recorder, and I felt my stomach drop through the floorboards of his porch. The one physical piece of evidence that could crack open a case no one even knew existed, and he'd put it in a dumpster filled with crushed Red Bull cans and expired Lunchables. The dumpster had been emptied on Thursday morning. It was Friday afternoon when we talked. I did the math and then I did something I'm not proud of, which is that I called every landfill and transfer station within 50 miles and badge-lied my way into a few shipping manifests. Nothing. The trail was gone. That should have been the end of it. But Ray did remember one more thing. When he'd picked up the jar to wipe the moss off the glass, there'd been something scratched into the lid. A word. Not property of or a name, but a single word scratched deep and ragged like it had been done with a key or a thumbnail. Still, that word kept me up for 3 nights. I recorded myself saying it in different ways, like a question, still, like a statement, still, like someone begging steel. And each time I said it, I felt like the word was wrapping around the back of my skull with a cold hand. I drove out to the Vosburg Trail on the following Tuesday. The weather had turned, the way it does in the PNW in late September, air like wet wool, clouds hanging so low they snagged on the telephone poles. I parked at the end of Silver Creek Road where the pavement just stops and becomes gravel, and then I walked. I brought a hiking pole, a tactical flashlight, a pair of work gloves, and a collapsed cardboard box to put anything I found in. You know, for evidence, for the show. The trail was narrower than I expected. The photo made it look scenic, moss and ferns and dappled light. In person, it was dark and wet, and the ferns were taller than my shoulders, bending inward so the path felt like a cave made of green skin. My boots made sucking sounds in the mud. Every step released that smell of rot, but not the good kind of rot, the kind that's just compost and rebirth. This was different. Underneath the earth smell, there was something else, something sweet that had gone wrong. I found the cedar Ray had described easily enough. Big old thing, split by lightning a decade ago, the trunk peeling away like a dried banana. The base was surrounded by ferns, and tucked between the roots, half covered in leaf litter, was a blue glass gleam. I thought, another jar, just another jar. It wasn't. It was a mason jar, the same vintage, but bigger, quart size, actually, with a scratched lid. Same words scratched on it, deeper this time. Still all caps now, gouged so hard the metal was folded back around the letters like a fresh wound. And inside there were 3 objects, each in a volume of that same dark amber liquid. 3 fingers, index, middle, ring, right hand, based on the angles, though I'm not a forensic anthropologist. They were in different states of decay, which is the detail that truly curdled me. One was nearly mummified, dark as a prune. One was bleached like it had been blanched in a pot. One looked fresh. Really fresh. Like it could have been cut yesterday, the fingertips still pale and plump, the nail painted a chipped shade of dark red. I put the jar in the cardboard box and drove home faster than I should have, the whole way feeling like there was a second presence in the car. Not a person, but the idea of a person. Someone who had been collecting these, cataloging them, leaving them in the woods for someone like me to find. The next day I started doing something I don't exactly like admitting to, which is that I pulled up every missing persons report from the last 20 years in a 70-mile radius and cross-referenced them for a specific detail. Partial right-hand amputation post-disappearance. There were 2 matches. 2. Under ordinary circumstances, you'd think 2 missing men with missing fingers would be the same case. The same victim, maybe, or the same perpetrator. But the dates didn't line up. One went missing in 2013, the other in 2004, and the 3rd finger, still fresh. I called a friend of a friend at the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, a crime analyst named Carla Vega who owed me a favor from the time I found a witness in the Pinedale case that she'd been chasing for months. She didn't laugh when I told her about the jars. That was the first time I truly understood I was no longer in the realm of hobby. She went quiet on the phone for a long time, and then she said, "Whitfield, you need to stop digging. Send me the photos and the coordinates and then walk away." "Why?" I asked. "What do you know?" "I don't know anything," she said, and her voice had changed, flattened like someone pressing down on hot metal. "But I read the old case files from the Vosburg area. There's a name that comes up, a person they never could find. He was called the Stillman." The Stillman. I wrote it on a sticky note and stared at it until the letters blurred. It sounded like a character from a cheap horror novel, the kind you read at a bus stop and forget by the time you reach your destination. But Carla's voice didn't sound like fiction. She sounded like someone checking the locks on their doors. The phone call ended with her promising to send me a redacted file, which she did, a single page of a 1989 property seizure report. A shack at the end of Silver Creek Road, on land that used to belong to a defunct logging company. The owner's name was on the report, but as a type of designation, not a person. Unidentified male, aka Stillman, occupant history unknown. The property was seized for unpaid taxes and sold at auction in 1991 to a corporation I'd never heard of. The corporation had since dissolved. I drove out to the address the next morning. It wasn't far from where Ray found the jar, maybe half a mile deeper into the woods, off a logging road so overgrown it took me 3 passes to even spot the turnoff. The shack was still standing, which was frankly a small miracle. It had collapsed in on itself like a lung that had been punctured. The roof was peeled open, the walls bowed outward. Most of the interior was exposed to the elements, a pile of rotted furniture, a mouse-eaten mattress, rain-bloated magazines from the early 90s. That's where I found the scrapbook. It was in a plastic bin, not a tote, one of those old white dishpans tucked under the floorboards beneath the mattress. You know, the classic spot. The plastic had kept the contents mostly dry. The scrapbook itself was dark red, the color of dried blood with a black spine. It had no title. But on the first page, written in pencil that had faded to the color of dust, was a date. June 4th, 1988, and a single sentence written in tight, cramped lettering that made my back teeth ache to look at. "The jar is opened. The lid is scratched. The still is always there. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that. I scrapped the episode I'd been planning about the jars and started a new one which I titled The Stillman Files. I told myself I was doing it for the families, for the 2 missing men, for the thousands of others like them who got lost in the system while the years piled up like dead leaves. But there was a part of me, a stubborn, cold part that had been growing in my chest since the day I found the second jar, that knew I was doing it for a different reason. I wanted him to find me. That's what you think, right? Like I was baiting a monster, like I had some secret plan. The truth is, I wanted to find out if he knew what I was doing. I wanted to see if my own name would turn up somewhere scratched on a lid, written in a margin. I wanted to know if I was being watched, because if I wasn't, that meant I was alone in the woods, and that thought was worse. A week ago, I got an email from a listener. The email address was a string of numbers, 1,101,988, which I recognized as the date from the scrapbook. The subject line was just my name, and the body of the email contained one attachment, a single JPEG file, the kind of image you'd get from a trail camera. Low resolution, grainy, black and white. It was a photo of a forest. I recognized the spot, the cedar tree, the base of the roots. And in the photo, there was a hand, a right hand, missing its middle finger, lying palm up on the moss next to the roots, as if placed there carefully, deliberately, with the fingers arranged in a gesture that hovered somewhere between a greeting and a wave. But that's not what made me go cold. What made me go cold was the reflection in the jar sitting beside the hand. The jar was lying on its side, lid off, and in the curved glass I could see a reflection. A face. A woman's face, gaunt and pale, wrapped in a dark hood. Her eyes were open. I knew her expression immediately because it was the expression I make when I'm concentrating on something, when I'm reading a document too small, or squinting at a photograph she shouldn't have been looking at, or leaning in close to a laptop screen at 3 a.m. The woman in the reflection was me. I'm sending you this email from the guest bedroom of Carla Vega's house. She's in the other room, arguing on the phone with a detective. She hasn't told me what the detective said. She doesn't have to. I know the traffic on this road is light. I know the cabin at the end of Silver Creek Road has a dark, damp smell under the rot, and I know now that smell is the smell of jars left to sweat in the dark. And I know that someday, maybe in a year, maybe in 10, a mushroom forager is going to find a new jar at the base of a rotting cedar, and inside it there will be something small and pale and personal. A photograph. And in the photograph, there will be a woman with her hand raised in a wave, her mouth open mid-sentence, her eyes wide with the eternal, frozen surprise of someone who just realized she was never investigating the case at all. She was collecting it.